Good morning, everyone. I am Richa Sharma, a committee member, First Dialogue, School of Forensic Science and Risk Management, Raksha Shakti University. Welcome you all for today's webinar. We have a First Dialogue webinar series. The First Dialogue stands for Forensic Intellectual Research Scientific and Technological Dialogue. The platform to various stakeholders associated with any academic dimension of fieldcraft of forensic science and every discipline to discuss the entire length and breadth of prehistoric, historic, contemporary, emerging, and futuristic ideas for creating and disseminating new forms of intellectual capital. Top priority, research revenues, locally scientific elements, and most modern technological applications. In first dialogue, we undertake activities like discussions, lectures, talks, seminars, conferences, and now webinars. Academic. In areas of forensic and other areas for further information and in turn attracting more ideas to pour and for the overall development of professional and profession. Our mission is to provide an ideal and superlative forum for creation, discussion of ideas and information to all stakeholders who aspire to serve forensics better in future, to use of new technology, knowledge and innovation. Thus, by doing justice to our motto of first dialogue, create, innovate and implement. We started this webinar and the topic of our today's webinar is chemical, biological, radiological, CBRN threats, risk mitigation, and national security. Now, I'd like to request Dr. Sweta Sharma, Assistant Professor, SFSRM, RSU, to introduce Colonel Sir to us. Also, I would like to request you all to turn off your video and audio and please do not share the screen while the webinar is going on. Once we are done, we will take up the questions. Please don't interrupt in between. Thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Richa. Firstly, I am very privileged to welcome Colonel Dr. Athavale, sir. Before I start, I have already got to know that he is a very proactive speaker and very punctual as far as speaker is concerned. Colonel Dr. Athavale is an 81 batch veteran cavalier and an alumni of Defence Services Staff College, Defence Institute of Advanced Technology, College of Military Engineering and Army War College. He has commanded an armored regiment during Operation Parakram and held numerous general staff appointments in his 3 decades plus active service. Colonel Athavale is a specialist in chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear security, risk mitigation, and incident management, with more than 2 decades of experience. And being a qualified tank technologist, he holds an MSc in Defense or Strategic Studies, a certificate in disaster management, a fellowship in CBRN disaster management, a postgraduate diploma in business administration, and a PhD for his trade research in CBRN terrorism and its crisis and consequence management in India. Colonel Athavale has been a key advisor to the Government of India on CBRN security and incident management. His areas of focus are CBRN security for critical infrastructure and high visibility events. Dr. Athavale was appointed as a key CBRN expert for the European Union CBRN Risk Mitigation Centers of Excellence initiative. Presently based at Pune, India, he functions as a CBRN security risk mitigation and incident management consultant. He is a visiting faculty at many Indian and overseas universities, academic institutions. He is a notable and having a recognized master's in CBRN and protection course at University of Rome, Tor Vergata, Italy. A prolific writer in CBRN journals and magazine. He already runs a website of his own, which will be shared to you as well for further pursuit. I'm privileged to have you here, sir. On behalf of my team at SFSRM RSU, we welcome you all. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Sorry. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction. Am I audible now? Am I audible to everyone?
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Right. We are going to talk today on a very important topic, which I dare say has not been given the kind of attention. A lot of work is being done on this. So I am very thankful to Dr. Shweta and Dr. Chaudhary to I'm able to speak to you all on this topic. I look forward to more as well. Before I start my topic per se, I would like to confess to you all that I am not a medical doctor. I am but a soldier and a student of this subject. I am neither a science graduate nor a biologist or a specialist in this field. I am a social scientist. So when you're asking questions, do keep this in mind because I am not into forensics or anything of that kind. I'm more into management of CBRN crisis. So I would focus on that particular aspect today. So if we are okay with that, we will, can I share my screen now to start the presentation? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I hope my screen is visible to all. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Right. So we are going to talk about CBRN threats and risk mitigation. What CBRN is, I'll come subsequently. I'll explain to you exactly what the term CBRN means. So I'm going to cover this topic in the heads as shown on the slide. It's going to be a little extensive kind of a talk because I have tried to crunch in all aspects of CBRN risk mitigation into this 2.5 hours kind of a talk that I take on this subject. But I will try and cover the essentials in this 1 hour. Agents and weapons are. And of course, neutron. But neutron is a very, very momentary kind of a thing after the nuclear explosion, which you will not be alive to tell anything. Then see on the right is the way radiation affects the body. So the initial symptoms would look like a burn, a radiation burn. The initial symptoms, of course, are headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and all that. But what is seen on the skin is something like a burn. And actually what you see outside, there is much more which has happened inside to your organs. So that is how a person can die of radiation. I'm just showing you some pictures of, see the first picture on the left, you can see a ladder and a man standing there. This shadow has got imprinted on the wall behind during the intense light which was there during the nuclear blast. There is no man and ladder there now, but the shadow remains on the wall. It is that strong intensity of light which was there when this explosion took place. Nuclear weapons can be delivered by all kinds of weapon systems like aircrafts, missiles, submarines, ships, artillery rockets also, and there are some kind of atomic demolition munitions which can be buried underground. When we are talking of nuclear explosion, we are talking of these types of explosions. The first is high altitude burst. Now this is way up in the nature that it causes casualties of. Also called radiological dispersal device, are similar to what would happen what happened in Chernobyl when a nuclear fallout happened. So the effects of a dirty bomb would be quite similar to that radioactive spread. Because it is a very, very simple device, a lot of terrorist organizations are interested in acquiring such naturally occurring radioactive substances and trying to create a dirty bomb. So you can imagine that even a hoax of a dirty bomb will create panic and paranoia. Because if there's an explosion and if somebody says that there could be radiation in that, you can imagine what will happen around it. It's not the immediate debris and the destruction which is there. It is also And that is what is very scary. And the world is very, very wary about this. And they are ensuring that such kind of weapons don't fall in the hands of terrorists. Coming to biological weapons. What we are seeing today is a biological agent which has been spread. A biological agent is a microorganism, causes disease in man, plant, animals, and so on. So there are all kinds of bacteria, rickettsia, virus, fungi, toxins, which cause such kind of diseases. When you use these kind of elements, these kind of agents in an offensive manner to cause casualties deliberately, it becomes biological warfare. Toxins. There is a difference between biological agents of bacteria, rickettsia, virus, and toxins. Toxins are plant extracts, and therefore they are highly poisonous and have been used for time immemorial to cause casualties. Toxins do not cause transmission from person to person, and therefore it is not a communicable disease. So you can target a specific population with toxins without the fear of that getting spread to other people or to yourself. So therefore, toxins are considered to be a favored agent, a biological agent, by the terrorist organizations for causing casualties. By the way, for all my lady friends who are listening on today, I hope you're very familiar with the first one, which is botulinum toxin. Let me clarify that. Botulinum toxin is nothing but what you get Botox treatment done in your spas and saloons. Botox is botulinum toxin and a very, very minute into the skin to kill the cells in that area so that your skin remains stretched and you look young. And that is what Botox treatment is all about. So it is actually the most deadliest of toxins which is being used to cause that kind of an effect on the skin. Biological warfare in history. I mentioned to you that it's been used since time immemorial, like poison-tipped arrows and poisoning of wells and so on. But the maximum use which was done of biological warfare was done by the Japanese in the Second World War. They had already researched on plague, anthrax, cholera, and typhoid, and they were using it against the prisoners of war and the common Chinese public when they occupied China. And many thousands of casualties happened with this biological weapons program. Also, they used chemical weapons. I shall come to that. But the advanced Japanese biological weapons program is quite well known. One, when the horses were being targeted, you can see a horse with a gas mask. Those of you who are interested more to learn about the Japanese biological stomach, because that is a very, very kind of information on Unit 731. Just two quick looks at Ebola and the coronavirus. I added these two slides specifically for today because I thought this information is important to be knowing. In Western Africa, in a number of countries, is a highly hemorrhagic fever. There is internal and external bleeding which takes place, and almost 50 to 60% casualties are fatal. And that's why it is a very dangerous kind of disease, and it is highly communicable from person to person. Any kind of bodily fluid like saliva, sweat, sputum, sneezing, blood, urine, defecation, anything can spread Ebola. And a lot of community engagement is required to control this kind of spread. Unfortunately, there is a terrorist organization in that area called Boko Haram, which is denying the WHO and the health workers from reaching the affected people, and therefore the spread has not been able to be contained as yet. There is no vaccine as yet available for Ebola. As far as coronavirus is concerned, most of us have got affected with coronavirus sometime in our lives. It is nothing but common cold in various forms. So therefore your symptoms are quite close to common cold. It is an upper respiratory tract illness. The Middle East respiratory syndrome, which happened in the areas of Saudi Arabia and all, which came from camels, MERS, or the SARS, the severe acute respiratory syndrome, which also started from China around Wuhan, are both coronaviruses. And the present coronavirus, which is called the COVID-19 or the N-coronavirus 19, is the latest epidemic. You can see the figures which I took from yesterday's news. It's almost 14.2 million people have got affected, and almost 600,000 deaths from the virus have taken place. These are yesterday's figures, official figures, so I could be wrong by sadly so, but a couple of 100,000 or so here. Coming to what is happening in terms of biological agents, genetic engineering. Now, that is changing the nature of pathogens, increasing pathogenity, changing the structure, changing markers used in diagnosis, and making it more resistant to drugs. Now, these are the things which are being engineered into these new types of pathogen, creating more deadly pathogen, and therefore our capability to restrict or to prevent casualties taking place is getting denuded. And that is what today's techno-terrorists are looking at. They have got trained people who are working on these kind of issues to ensure that they are generating better and more lethal biological weapons to target people. So is the world looking at stopping this? Yes. There is something called the Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention. This convention on prohibition and development, production and stockpiling of biological and toxin weapons was signed in April 72. As of today, there are 183 countries who have signed this convention. India is a signatory to the BTWC right since 1972, and we have never had, and nor do we have now, any stockpiles of biological weapons. However, we have two laboratories, DRD Gwalior and the CISR National Institute of Virology in Pune, where research is being carried out to develop vaccines against such highly lethal pathogen. So these are the only two labs. The BSL-4 lab, Biosafety Level 4, is at NIV Pune. Coming to chemical weapons now, these are called the common man's atom bomb. Why? Because the ease with which you can get chemicals, the simplicity with which you can actually deploy them as weapon systems, and the cost effectiveness of these chemicals makes it very, very lucrative for any organization, terrorist organization, to use chemical weapons in a very, very malified kind of a manner. So poisonous chemical compounds, using their poisonous nature, is what chemical warfare is all about. All fertilizer and dyestuff plants are just one or two steps away from creating deadly chemical weapons. As far as the military level chemical weapons are concerned, these are the four headings which are marked in red below: the classification of blister agents, choking agents, blood agents, and nerve agents. These are the four types of agents, and as the names suggest, that is the kind of effect that it creates on the body. Then we have the incapacitating agents, which are used for riot control primarily, where you have tear gas, mental incapacitators, smoke, pepper spray, and so on. Now, these are incapacitating agents. But along with that, there is something which is called the ticks, which I shall cover a little later. First, let us see chemical warfare in history. Common chemicals like sulfur, chlorine, have been used extensively in warfare. World War I actually saw the maximum use of chemicals in warfare. If you see the slide, it says 650 tons of chlorine and mustard gas was used in World War I by the Germans against the French and the Britishers. Then came the development of nerve agents after or during the Second World War. It never got used in warfare at all. Different types of nerve agents like sarin, soman, tabun, and VX were created. Offshoot of VX called Novichok agent was also created by the Russians. But these agents were never deployed in warfare as such during the First and Second World War. Second World War actually saw very little use of chemical weapons. However, after that, mustard gas and sarin, which is a nerve agent, was used by Saddam Hussein against the Kurds in the Gulf War. Even today, in Syria, many types of chemical agents are being used to target both sides, that is the government forces as well as the rebel forces. So extensive use, especially of a very common industrial chemical like chlorine is being used in the Syrian war. This is what I was talking about, toxic industrial chemicals. These are very commonly used chemicals in hundreds and thousands of tons in industry, but they are highly toxic and can be used as weapon systems. If you see the ones which I have highlighted in red, ammonia, chlorine, formaldehyde, used in tons, but are very potent chemical warfare agents. I've also highlighted in the medium hazard methyl isocyanate specifically because that is the chemical which was released accidentally in the Bhopal gas. So, like the biological weapons, we also have the weapons which have been prohibited. We have an organization for prohibition of chemical weapons called the OPCW, established at Hague in Netherlands. So this works under the United Nations and is the governing body for the Chemical Weapons Convention. The Chemical Weapons Convention was ratified in 1997, and 193 countries as of today are partners to this convention. India is a signatory right since beginning. However, in 1993, we had a stockpile of chemical weapons, which we were told to destroy by April 2009, as per the convention obligations. And we have since then deployed 100% by March 2009 itself. OPCW has been doing human service across the world to reduce the threat of chemical weapons. And therefore, they were given the Nobel Peace Prize in 2013. This organization is still working in a lot of areas, especially now focusing on counter chemical terrorism areas to prevent terrorists from using such weapon systems. So having seen the threat spectrum or the types of weapon systems, let us see how much of threat exists today in today's day-to-day lives. I have made this little chart
Excuse me,
which
sir.
shows...
Voice is not audible.
It's not audible? Hello?
It is audible, sir. You may continue.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. So on this chart, I have made a distinction between CBRN threats, which are natural threats. You can talk of environmental toxicity or disease outbreaks. And then there is the man-made threats, which could be accidental, where we have the industrial accidents, environmental pollution, laboratory accidents, waste material, and so on. And then lastly, we come to the deliberate part, which is a state using CBRN material or CBRN weapon systems or the CBRN terrorism. Now, that is what the world is actually getting worried about, because all the treaties and conventions are banning states from using these chemicals. But nothing is stopping non-state actors from using these. And that is what people are worried about. All the countries are getting worried about is CBRN terrorism. But when we are talking of state and terrorism-related use of these material, you must first understand where this material is coming on. And if we are able to put a hold on that aspect, then we will be able to deny the use of that chemical for such kind of use. And the material is actually coming from these four areas. It is coming from the pollutants, it is coming from industrial areas, it is coming from logistics during transportation, if interdiction is taking place, or breach in a supply chain is taking place, and of course laboratories, which have highly lethal samples of chemicals and biological agents and even radioactive substances. I have already talked of the Bhopal gas tragedy. As you can see, there have been 25,000 deaths and more, counting till now, and it's the largest chemical accident in the world even till today. A lot of lessons came out of that. I dare say we haven't been able to learn all lessons. Although they were on paper, a lot of work has been done to prevent such kind of things from happening. But it seems that all lessons have not been learned properly. What was seen recently in Vizag, the styrene gas leak at LG Polymers in Vizag on 7th of May, which I've put in the center bottom, is the latest case that we have had in India. There are many such cases which are happening around. We have had the radiation release from an irradiator's cap at Mayapuri in Delhi in 2010, burning of toxic materials, tires, waste chemicals, and so on, dumping of chemicals in certain areas. All of these are causing chemical incidents, and we need to stop these from happening. Let us now see how the terrorists are trying to do. Terrorists are no longer the illiterate people of the past. They are not cannon fodder anymore. They are trained scientists, technologists, technicians in laboratories who are working on these kind of aspects. Highly qualified people. So terrorist organizations have better organizational capabilities. They have got logistical resources, financial resources, and improving knowledge and skills is what they're looking at now. I shall talk to you about a particular incident which happened when I was in Africa at that time. So a lot of groups today are looking at such capability generation and enhancement for use of CBRN material for terror activities. These are the examples of toxic terror which have already happened in the world. I will be talking firstly of the one on the left top. In May to August 2016, the Kenyan intelligence, with the help of Interpol, intercepted and raided a small government hospital in the eastern shores of Kenya. And they caught two people who were working there trying to convert animal anthrax. Mind you, animal anthrax is endemic to African region, especially Central and Eastern Africa. So they were trying to extract that animal anthrax and convert it into transportable spore cultures. They wanted to use anthrax in Europe, and they were trying to stabilize those spores to transport them to Europe. This was happening in a very, very nondescript, quiet government hospital laboratory, pathological laboratory in Kenya. After interrogation, they found that it's a big network, and they found people in Uganda, in Ethiopia also working, and they were all trained doctors who were working on behalf of Al-Shabaab terrorist organization operating out of Somalia. Al-Shabaab is affiliated to the ISIS, and therefore they were working with ISIS for converting this anthrax and use them in Europe. That is the kind of work which is going on. I leave it to your imagination how many pathological labs in India are secure, what kind of work is going on, who is doing the oversight, who is monitoring what is happening. I leave it to your judgment. But that is the kind of threat that we are facing today. Of course, the assassination of King Jong Nam with a VX nerve agent in Kuala Lumpur airport, Novichok agent, again a nerve agent being used in UK in 2018, and of course the most famous chemical terrorist attack in Tokyo, which happened in 1995, mind you, way back, by the Om Shinriko cult group, where sarin was used in the Tokyo metro to cause casualties. 5,000 odd people got affected, about 14 dead in that particular terrorist attack. There are many recent CBRN cases which are taking place. COVID-19 is still continuing. Ebola outbreak is still continuing. We just saw the Vizag styrene gas leak, and many such things are happening. So we need to be aware, be vigilant on what is happening around us, and start taking precautions accordingly. Coupled with that is the vulnerabilities which India faces. Terrorism across the board, densely populated cities. You're seeing what is happening in COVID now. Too much of population, it's very difficult to control. There are slums and areas where you cannot maintain the distances which are required for stopping this disease. And that is another major problem that we have. Coupled with that, our response footprint for such kind of a thing is very, very low. Expansion of industry increases the use of chemicals, increase the use of toxic material, and therefore causes more possibilities or vulnerabilities. India has got some of the best legislations in the world for CBRN activities. But implementation of this legislations is where we are going wrong. We are not able to implement them in the right manner, and that is what is causing all the problems which we are seeing. Awareness was, of course, I don't know how many of you really knew the term CBRN before we started this session today. So this is, in a way, my contribution to raising awareness on CBRN. And public literacy, public knowledge of these aspects is very, very important. Unprepared, inadequate medical services. I don't want to elaborate on that. You're reading the news, you're hearing the news, watching what is happening around you, and it's quite evident that we are not prepared at all. Waste and effluent disposal. Just to give you an idea, my city, Pune, produces more than 1,700 tons of garbage every day. Every day. How much is getting disposed correctly? How are we managing this? It's a huge amount of garbage that we are producing. We need to take a look at that. So after hearing what is happening and what are the threats, let us see how we are dealing with this. Okay, first the international initiatives. Under the UN, I already mentioned to you about the Chemical Weapons Convention and the Biological Toxin Weapons Convention, but the UN is seized with CBRN terrorism aspects, and the UN Security Council Resolution 1540 and 1673 specifically address that. All UN member countries are obligated by UNSCR 1540 and 1673 to take measures, to initiate measures in their own countries to prevent CBRN terrorism. We also have the UNODC's Terrorism Prevention Branch, the UNICRI, United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Institute, is working with a CBRN risk mitigation program. And they have clubbed this program with the EU CBRN Action Plan and the Risk Mitigation Centers of Excellence program. I was working for 3 years on the EU CBRN Risk Mitigation Centers of Excellence program, and I was looking at advising countries, 11 countries in Africa, of proliferation of such material. And there are many other international protocols and treaties which look at chemical and biological agents and so on and so forth. In any country, this is common to all countries, mind you, what I'm going to show you. The first is developing a national CBRN strategy, which will have your threat assessment and lay down the accountable. From the strategy, we draw out a action plan, a CBRN plan. What are the tasks required to empower yourself to ensure to any CBRN threat? Nodal agencies, support agencies, timelines, budgets, everything is spelled out in this plan. And then that is backed up with domestic laws and regulations, which need to be aligned with all the international treaties that I showed you before. We have a lot of such laws which are aligned to that. And last is the physical management structure, incident management structure. Now, there is a threat prevention structure to prevent these kind of threats. Then there's a crisis management, immediate, and there's a consequence management, which is long-term. All these things need to be put in place to be able to manage CBRN threat in its totality. As far as India is concerned, we have clubbed our disaster management structure for managing CBRN crisis also. So you have the crisis prevention, you have the crisis management, and you have the consequence management. As of today, the NDMA and under it, the NDRF battalions are the nominated CBRN responders. Each battalion has 18 teams of 45 persons, but out of that, only one team per battalion is trained and equipped for CBRN emergency response. We have a total of 12 battalions as of now. 4 more are under raising. This slide shows the nodal ministries. I've highlighted in red those which are concerning CBRN. So for biological, which is COVID-19, which is going on now, you can see it is the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare which is taking the lead, being the nodal ministry for all biological related aspects. Of course, CBRN is a multi-stakeholder kind of a paradigm, and therefore you have a whole lot of other stakeholders which need to get into the fray. And they all need to come on board at the same table to make policies, laws, guidelines, and everything. I've listed out, this is not an exhaustive list. You can add more if you feel that they are relevant to a particular kind of a situation. A number of guidelines have been issued by the National Disaster Management Authority that is available on their website. I have only listed here which are relevant to CBRN related issues. You can go on the website of the NDMA and download these guidelines for implementation. I was mentioning about laws. As of today, India has more than about 100 laws which are related to CBRN, various aspects of CBRN. As far as the radiation control and nuclear control is concerned, there are 12 main acts and laws. For biosecurity and biosafety, there are 21 main acts and laws. And for chemical, there are a huge amount of laws which are relevant today. But the main ones are on top: the Chemical Weapons Convention Act of 2000, the WMD Act of 2005, and the Disaster Management Act of 2005. These are the governing laws for CBRN. To support these activities, we have key laboratories for CBRN. So you have the chemical laboratories, you have the biological laboratories, and you have the radiological and nuclear laboratories. I have mentioned in red, which are the prominent ones, which are the key laboratories for CBRN related research. Certain CBRN specific initiatives have been taken. I have already mentioned the first 2 or 3 to you. We have set up radiation emergency centers. We have established the mobile radiation detection systems, and there are monitors being installed at seaports, airports, and border ports to track movement of CBRN material. This is in progress now at the moment, and a lot of ports have been covered as of now. A quick look at CBRN equipment. I know I'm running short of time. So we'll have a quick look at CBRN equipment. It is classified under detection, identification, analysis, protection, which has individual and collective protection, decontamination, software and control systems, and of course, medical management. As far as the detection means are concerned, unfortunately, in India, we don't have them being produced in India. We are making progress in that. A couple of firms are in the process of doing that at the moment, but they have not yet been operationalized. And this is an area for industry, especially, and forensic science to look at detection and analysis means in-country productions. We are talking of the individual protective equipment. Again, you saw what happened during COVID. When COVID started, the biohazard PPE or personal protective equipment was in short supply. We never thought we'll require that many quantities. It's not that Indian firms don't make this. Mind you, there are Indian firms which make all of these equipment, which is shown on the slide. However, they were not being made in the quantities which suddenly were required since January. And sadly, the industry and the government did not match up and synergize their requirements in the month of January by anticipating what would be required, and therefore we fell short of the requirement. We are even today falling short of requirements of PPE and masks at a number of places. So what you see below are the hazmat suits, level A, B, C, and D. These are industrial level suits. What you see on the extreme right is the military grade CBRN suit. I must mention here that India has a company which makes excellent military grade CBRN suits today. That suit, I was party to designing that suit, and I can take a lot of credit for that, I think, including the mask, that black colored mask which you see on top. Again, designed and manufactured in India. We have got it tested abroad in the best of the laboratories, and it has passed all the tests. So it is a world-class kind of a suit and the mask which is being made in India. So we have the capability. It needs to be scaled up, and government needs to pay more attention and support to these kind of industries. Collective protection, static shelters which could be underground, overground, or halfway buried. You have semi-mobile inflatable shelters which are quick deployed shelters, and you have the mobile shelters, or mobile CBRN protection, which could be in battle tanks, in ships and aircraft and such kind of thing. All these are being factored in our military paradigm. Quick look at the decontamination means. This term of decontamination suddenly got filled up with sanitizers being used by all of us since January. But before that, the military was already seized by this, and all the material that you see, all the types of devices that you see on the screen are used for decontaminating personnel, vehicle, equipment, and so on. Different types of materials are there. There are gels, there are dry powders, there are water-based decontamination systems. All are being used. Mind you, none of them are being manufactured in India. Then something to control the whole thing, CBRN control systems. Now we have integrated control systems where the input from different sensors which are placed in, say, a critical infrastructure, a building is there, like an airport, for example, and you have sensors, CBRN sensors placed at different places in the building. They are giving inputs to a central control system from where, in case of an alarm going off in a particular area, immediate response can be factored in, people can be informed, measures can be taken to shut off the air conditioning in certain areas. You can have warning messages passed to other areas. You can have warning messages passed to the municipal corporation of that particular city for further response to that particular situation. So these are kind of CBRN control systems. There are companies in India which are already working and manufacturing this kind of a system. I am party to that particular development also. There are a lot of responder software which are there. This is specifically for first responders. And the two best ones are the ERD 2016, which you see on the first, Emergency Response Guide issued by the Department of Homeland Security in USA, and WISER, which is the last one mentioned here. Both are available in Google Play to download on your mobile phones. They are free of cost and extremely useful for response measures in a CBRN situation. Quick look at medical equipment. Some of it is now known to you all, like resuscitators and ventilators. Casualty bags and isolation pods are something peculiar to CBRN, because you do not want a contaminated casualty to convey his contamination outside, and you don't want outside contamination to go to the casualty who's inside this bag. And if you see these small ports which are there with gloved hands, so a medical personnel can actually manage the casualty inside this bag, which is pressurized with clean air, filtered clean air, and therefore the casualty can be managed from outside. You can even connect a drip and other measures onto the person, onto the patient from outside itself. So that these kind of devices are existing today. Some of them are there in India, some of them are being made, rest of them are imported as of now. Quick look at societal issues. As society, how does all this affect us? In case of a CBRN incident, like for example, take COVID-19, there is a lot of panic and chaos which takes place. And the reason is understanding of the threat is not there. People don't realize what is happening, what could happen, what are the kind of casualties that will take place. And therefore, what you saw nowadays in social media, a whole lot of miscommunication started off initially as to what is this COVID-19. And therefore, people were taking all kinds of measures to protect themselves. So a lot of confusion exists. In a situation where there has been an incident at a particular site, panic and stampedes take place. You see what happened in Vizag recently. A lot of people were just running from that area, panicking, stampeding, rushing over each other. Mass movement happens. Symptom identification delays. Medics are not trained. Our medical hospitals are not training doctors to diagnose CBRN casualties. It takes a lot of time for our doctors to really identify, okay, this is a casualty from this particular type of agent. And that is a problem area. So my appeal to medical science or medical colleges to include this particular curriculum and train doctors more on these kind of threats, which are going to happen more in future, sadly so. But then there's something called worried well, and this is you and me. This relates to exactly common people. It happened during swine flu. I must give you this example. When swine flu started off, I saw it in Pune, in my city. A lot of people who were not showing symptoms were rushing to the clinics. Mere ko bhi de do ye dose. Kya pata kal ho jaye? And what happened was, in the first 48 hours, all the doses of that vaccine vanished off the shelves. And when people with actual symptoms started showing up, there was no medicines left. So worried well are the people who have actually gobbled up all the medicine. They're not showing any symptoms. And that is why if you see even nowadays, the TV and the Ministry of Health is constantly telling you, do not go to hospitals unless you're really showing serious symptoms of COVID. Why? Because you will actually make a surge in that area and you will not allow the medical system to do worthwhile attention to actually people who are showing symptoms. Of course, there are a lot of system inadequacies and we need to address them on priority. Social disruption takes place, isolation, quarantine. We are seeing what is happening in lockdown. Sitting at home in well-being condition also, we are feeling agitated. And of course, social media. I am appalled at the type of messages that are floating around on social media. Understanding how to wear a mask itself is become like a priority area. I have been, whenever I see people not wearing a mask properly, people wear it under the nose. I've even seen people hanging the mask from one ear, just vertically. It's not covering nose or mouth or anything at all. I mean, it's shocking. So we need to, make people aware and educate people on the correct use. And social media can play a big role in that and stop rumors from spreading like that. So therefore, what we need to do is develop a CBRN security culture. Of course, stakeholder organizations, government agencies. Initially, government agencies were not prepared to handle COVID. I'm being very frank about that. Even now, a lot of areas, they are not prepared. Central police organizations need to be educated on how to deal with this kind of a situation. Industry needs to be educated on that. High schools and colleges, we have included disaster management. We need to include CBRN incident management also. Develop postgraduate courses on CBRN, including for medical colleges. It was mentioned in my introduction, I am a visiting faculty to University of Rome, which is the only university as of today running a master's course in CBRN protection. That course is recognized by the United Nations, and that is the level of training that they're giving there. And of course, what I have been writing about quite a lot, invest in a national CBRN center of excellence, a nodal agency which does all the research, the analysis, the academics, and of course, train people, including the private agencies, on CBRN risk mitigation. It's a need of the hour. And that is something which I have been propagating. I have finished my topic per se, but just to give you a look at what resources are there for further study on through this subject, I will just flash quickly the do's and don'ts in a chemical attack. The first one, overreaching goal, find clean air quickly. If you're outside, go inside. If you're inside, go outside. As simple as that. Put a wet handkerchief on your nose and mouth, and it will give you those extra seconds to evacuate from there. Same for biological. Do not treat yourself. This is the main thing in a biological attack, because you do not know what you have got affected with. Find a qualified medical practitioner to treat you. Radiological attack, and it's quite similar to the nuclear attack. Avoid inhaling the dust which is around you. So put a wet handkerchief around your nose and mouth and escape to a closed area where this kind of a dust is not prevailing. In a nuclear attack, you have to also find shelter from the debris and destruction which is moving around you. This is my book, Toxic Portents. It was released last year by the National Disaster Management Authority member secretary, Lieutenant General N.C. Marwa at New Delhi. It deals with CBRN incident management in India. It's a pioneering book on this subject in India, published by Which Books India Private Limited, Delhi. It's available on Amazon.in. Those of you who are interested can get. I would certainly recommend a few copies in the university library. There are many journals and magazines which are there where a lot of people, a lot of scholars are contributing to that. I myself am contributing to the CBNW, which is on the right top corner. I must also tell you that the next issue of CBNW, which is coming out tomorrow most probably, would be having an article from me. And I've been writing regularly to that magazine. It comes out every 6 months. A number of other books other than mine, of course, are on CBRN protection and various response and things like that, which are available in the market, can be bought. I mentioned to you about the CBRN applications, ERG 2016 and the WISER, but there are a number of other portals, links which are available where a lot of study can be carried out on CBRN aspects. I have finished. Thank you very much. My website is given below. It is a personal website. I don't have any company or anything. I'm a retired soldier. But that website talks about me and what work I do. So do visit that website. Thank you very much for the patient hearing. Jai Hind.
Now we are up for questions. Hello everyone. Please, you can type your questions or you can unmute yourself and ask.
Any questions?
I had a question, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sir, as you mentioned in your initial part of your talk, that as per official position of our country, we do not have a CBRN stockpile for any kind of warfare. I just wanted to understand, is this the official position of the country? Is this the real position of the country? Because in case if an unethical CBRN warfare is unleashed at our country, what would be our counter mechanism?
Yeah. Okay. As far as India is concerned, we do not have, and this is also the official position, we do not have any CBRN weapon systems other than the nuclear, which we have openly declared that yes, we are a nuclear weapon state. But we do not talk of biological weapons, we do not talk of chemical weapons, we have no stockpile, we have no production capability, and we have no weaponized chemical or biological agents existing in the country today. That is an actual as well as official position. But we have laboratories, I've shown you some of the laboratories there, the DRDO laboratories, which carry out research on these kind of pathogens and chemical agents, the highly toxic chemical agents and pathogens, so as to develop antidotes and preventive measures to ensure that our soldiers, in case they get targeted by such kind of weapon system, can take the precautionary measures, can take the antidotes and be protected. So that kind of measures have been developed and they are existing. But as far as the weaponized content is concerned, chemical and biological as well as radiological, we do not have any of those in the country. Nuclear, yes, we are a declared nuclear weapon state. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One more question from my side.
Yeah, please.
Incidences like Bhopal gas tragedy that happened way back in 1984. We call it as an accidental, kind of tragedy. Should we include or categorize this kind of tragedies as chemical warfare?
Bhopal was an accident, and so was Vizag, which happened recently. These are preventable accidents. There have been lapses at a number of stages in both the cases, and many such cases which keep happening quite almost regularly, I would say, industrial accidents which keep taking place, which are preventable. And it is happening not because regulations or guidelines don't exist, but we are not able to implement those in the correct manner. And that is where that shortcoming or lacuna lies. But we cannot call them a warfare kind of an incident. In a warfare incident, a chemical agent is going to be deliberately used with a delivery system to target a specific set of population, which is not what happened in these two cases. It was an accidental release, and therefore anybody and everybody in that area started to become casualties in that. So that, of course, they were not chemical warfare incident. There have been chemical warfare incidents which are taking place, but this specifically is a chemical accident which has happened. I must also give you another chemical accident which happened, which is something which, there were large chlorine cylinders, industrial chlorine cylinders, which were lying on the port in Mumbai, in the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust complex area. These were chemical industrial cylinders, big, massive cylinders, a number of them which were lying there, which were under litigation and not picked up by the consignee. And they were lying there. For many years, they were lying there. Nobody paid heed to that. And out of corrosion of the metal around it, on one fine day, a whole lot of chlorine started leaking. So much so that the chlorine from Mumbai port started coming across the creek towards Navi Mumbai, and the Mumbai Municipal Corporation had no means to deal with that. So they found a very simple and a very crude solution to the whole thing. They got a bulldozer and pushed most of these into the sea so that chlorine dissolves in the water and the further damages, or destruction is averted. But that is not the way to deal with this kind of thing. We need to put in measures to be able to deal with these kind of situations in the right manner. And that is where a command and control system at the municipal level, which could have detected and passed the messages and told people to take precautions, would have been very useful at that time. Even now, most municipal corporations don't have this. In the smart city program, some measures are planned to be included, but not yet implemented.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Richard, there are certain questions in the chat box for sir. Please read it. Richard, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Sir, next question is, what will be the result when soldiers are attacked by biological threats or agents?
Sorry, can you give that question again?
Sir, what will be the results when soldiers are attacked by biological threats or agents?
Okay. You see, unlike chemical, where immediate symptoms are visible, in a biological case, symptoms only are visible once the disease starts manifesting. And depending on the type of disease, it takes time. It could be from 1 day, 2 day, or it could be up to 20 days for manifestation of that disease. Like for COVID, it is told that you must have a 14-day, watch period before the disease may manifest in a person. So different diseases is different. Ebola, for example, takes about 12 days, 10 to 12 days for manifestation. So we need to look at that kind of a thing. In a biological incident, unless the first patient is identified, we will not know that we have been targeted with a disease. But once the first patient has been identified, soldiers, when they go to battle, or even in the peacetime, they have suits and measures and masks and systems in place, SOPs in place to cater for such kind of attacks. And therefore, they would be donning up that kind of a gear. I showed you the military level suits which are there and the masks which are there, which are enough to cater for any kind of biological, chemical, or radiological kind of a attack on soldiers. So our soldiers are kitted out with such kind of measures. They have these kits available to them and use these kits as and when required. The moment that warning is given to them that there is such kind of a threat which is there, or an agent which has been disposed, they will don that suit and they will protect themselves. These measures are existing.
Okay, sir. Sir, as this session is also live on our YouTube channel, so we have few questions from YouTube.
Okay.
Sir, the first question is, what is mustard gas?
What is mustard gas? Mustard gas is a blister agent. It is developed to cause, when you get affected by the mustard gas or the droplets or aerosol of mustard gas, sulfur mustard is actually the compound which is there. So when sulfur mustard strikes the skin, it generates blisters on your skin. And those blisters are very big blisters all over the body. It gets generated and they will turn pustular very fast. And that is how the person dies. I mean, it goes all over your body. That is mustard gas. It's a blister agent.
Okay, sir. Sir, as next question is, what type of mask should we wear, as you mentioned it in your PPT?
Okay, for different threats, different types of threats that you're likely to face, there are different types of masks which are there. For example, the doctors wear a surgical mask, which is a very basic kind of a mask to prevent contamination from them to go to the patient or from the patient to come to them. Because normal routes of biological agents hitting you are from the respiratory or the oral route. So that is the simple mask or cloth mask as you call it. Then you have the particulate filter masks, which are the N95, N97 kind of category of masks, which are now prevalent all over. So the material which is used in the mask has got different layers, treated layers, which filter the air which you are breathing inside. And it keeps the virus or the contamination outside. For chemicals, you require further different types of masks to prevent the chemical from entering your mouth and nose. What you saw on the screen when the black mask was being shown had filter canisters on the side, to be fitted around that. And you are breathing through the canister which is going into your nose and mouth. So those filter canisters have different layers, almost 6 or 7 layers, to prevent that chemical from entering your body. And the same is the case with the suit. The suit is also a 3-layer suit which has a treatment on the front to prevent these chemicals from entering the suit and affecting your body. So that is why for different types of threats, you have different types of masks which are there. I can share a small brief which I have made. It's a 2-page brief on types of masks and prevention. I will share that with Dr. Shweta after the session is over.
Okay, sir. So another question by Dr. Shweta. Can you please recommend any major policy changes to deal with the CBRN risk management?
Oh, yes, this is a question very close to my heart, and I have been trying to vociferously try and tell that we need a CBRN strategy in our country. Unfortunately, our country is too big. We cannot have a single law to manage CBRN as a whole because our chemical industry is one of the biggest in the world. We have a huge amount of biological research going on in the country. Bhabha Atomic Research Center, the number of power reactors that we have. So we are into CBRN in a huge way for peaceful purposes, for good purposes. And therefore, we need to have CBRN strategy in our country. Unfortunately, we have not looked at CBRN from the security angle till date, except for nuclear weapons. And we need to look at CBRN from the security angle. We need a CBRN strategy, and we need to make a CBRN national plan to deal with that. Apart from that, as policy changes, we need to ensure that awareness generation, especially in the government bodies, in the administrative level, needs to be enhanced. And therefore, that policy needs to be implemented soon. Yeah.
Sir, next question by Mr. Harshil Mehta. Is there any unified common SOPs in place to deal with future biological or tactical nuclear threats? What will be our response?
If you're talking of warfare-related issue, tactical nuclear threats, or biological threats in the battlefield, yes, there are policies existing, there are SOPs existing with the armed forces to deal with that kind of a thing. But as far as public is concerned, the NDMA has given guidelines on how states, districts need to manage such kind of threats in public. You will be surprised to know that Mumbai Municipal Corporation had issued, or Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation had issued a booklet on NBC threats way back in 1980. I was myself surprised that we had a SOP on do's and don'ts in a nuclear or a chemical or a biological attack issued by the BMCC in 1980s. I don't see that happening now anywhere. And I don't know whether that has ever been revised. So we need to look at that kind of a thing. We need to generate SOPs, but a lot of work on paper at least has been done. Our NDRF battalions have been trained to handle such kind of disasters. So those SOPs exist on ground today. Every district and in every state, such SOPs are existing to deal with CBRN type of threats at the ground level also. So such SOPs are existing. Yeah.
So next question. India's independence on nuclear power would affect the situation with reference to CBRN risk mitigation?
You see, our nuclear power program is for peaceful purposes, for generating power for the need of the country. All our nuclear power plants have extensive security and safety measures in place. In fact, one of the best in the world, I can vouch for that. So, as far as our nuclear power plants are concerned, they are not affecting our CBRN risk mitigation policies because there is no risk coming from there to the public. As far as the power plants themselves are concerned, they have a complete comprehensive program of risk mitigation in case there is a radiation leak taking place from the power plants. Not only just in the power plant area, but also the surrounding areas. And it is to that effect that I mentioned in one of the slides that we have radiation detection monitors being placed all over the country today. We are also having our national intelligence grid, which is being combined with this to help us to ensure that no radiation, no harmful radiation is being spread anywhere in the country. So I think we are quite well prepared with the CBRN risk mitigation in spite of our going in a big way for nuclear power generation?
Sir, this question is by few of our participants that do you think that COVID-19 is a biological warfare imposed deliberately by China?
This is a very common question which I have been answering. No. COVID-19 is not, to my mind, biological warfare by a country, especially China. Yes, there are laboratories in China, including in Wuhan, which carry out research on deadly pathogen. It's a BSL-4 level laboratory which exists in Wuhan. And a lot of research is being carried out by that laboratory, and such research is being carried out by all the BSL-4 laboratories across the world. So, to say that it is a biological warfare being pitched by China on the world, I don't think that is right. Accidental release from that laboratory is a possibility and could have happened. We don't know for sure what has happened. But yes, as far as I feel, it is not a biological warfare kind of a situation.
Sir, next question is, do masks have expiry date, and is 85 mask essential for COVID-19 or cotton mask is enough?
You see, masks do have an expiry life. Certain masks which cannot be reused or washed and lose their protective capability have an expiry life of exposure to contamination. So if they are exposed to contamination, they need to be destroyed. As simple as that. And not thrown into the garbage bin like what is happening in most places today. There are certain masks which continue to retain their protective capability after a few washes, and that is mentioned in the specifications of that mask. As far as N95 or N97 masks are concerned, some types of N95 and N97 masks are rewashable and reusable. But there is a procedure to treat them before you can reuse them again. It's not that you take them into the bathroom and wash them and, okay, keep it to dry and it's ready to use. You need to treat that mask to be able to protect you again from such kind of contamination. As far as common cloth masks are concerned, they are not protecting you from the COVID-19 as effectively as a N95 or an N97 can protect. By the way, just for clarification, the 95 or 97 is the percentage of protection that that mask is giving. I have had queries where there were N97 masks available, but people didn't want to buy it because they have been told only N95 kharidna hai. They didn't realize that an N97 is giving you 97% of protection as compared to N95, which is giving you only 95% of protection. So actually, N97 is better, but people don't want to buy that because somebody has told them that only N95 can protect you, which is not, which is a fallacy. So, and I must also highlight you that common handkerchief which is tied around the nose and ears is not protecting you at all. Handkerchief does not stop COVID. So please stop using just handkerchief. Please use a proper mask, especially when you're outside home. I've seen people also sitting inside cars with windows rolled up, air conditioning on, wearing a mask and a face shield also. It's of no use. You don't require it inside that kind of a environment. So use it where you are likely to face contamination. You are in the midst of public, you're going out for shopping or you're going out for some essential purpose or an emergency requirement, or you're going out to office when the lockdown is over. Please protect yourself with a mask and also use sanitizers every time you touch anywhere.
Is CBRN will be a huge future threat as far as India and Asia region is concerned?
Firstly, I must correct the question. It is not a future threat. It's a current threat. So we must look at it as a current threat and not a future threat. And it is not only India or Asia or South Asia which is a threat. It is the whole world which is a threat. Today, industry, because of globalization, is so compact that for making one item, you're sourcing raw material from 10 different countries. So therefore, it is not one country which is at threat. It is many countries which are at threat. And how much of chemicals are we using today? It's in hundreds and thousands of tons that we are using chemicals today. Wagons are going loaded with chemicals. For example, in USA, there was a complete train full of ethanol, which had an accident, and the ethanol sprayed out of the train, the wagons which were carrying ethanol, and there was a huge amount of environmental contamination which took place. They had to evacuate a whole lot of villages and towns which are surrounding that area. That is the kind of effects that it can have. So it is not a future threat, it is a current threat, and it is not just India or Asia. Everywhere this threat is there, and we need to be aware of that. We need to be vigilant about these issues.
Sir, next question by Mr. Sudhanshu Tiwari, sir. Is there any standard field testing procedure if any such mishap take place? If yes, which laboratory body is responsible for the field testing and further analysis of samples?
Okay. There are different laboratories and different agencies for chemical, for biological, and for the nuclear part of it, or the radiological part of it. As far as the radiological and nuclear part of it is concerned, we have the Department of Atomic Energy, the DAE, which is the governing body for that, and which uses laboratories at BARC and under the CISR, which carry out research analysis on these particular aspects. Like I mentioned to you, there are radiation monitors being placed across the country, and there are more being put in place now, which will give you an input in case there is a threat of radiation in and around. And the DAE will accordingly start taking action accordingly. As far as chemical is concerned, which is the big problem, because there are too many chemicals being used, too much of chemical pollution which is happening, burning of material which is taking place, dumping of stuff in normal garbage which is taking place. Simple things like throwing Harpic into the dustbin is actually highly toxic chemical which is being dumped. And we should not be doing that. We should dispose it off in a correct manner, which is in a sealed container that you should dump it there. And you should tell the garbage people this has got this. Because that is highly toxic. That fellow can die if he is going to be exposed to that. So we need to be very, very careful as far as chemicals is concerned. Again, there is the National Chemical Laboratory here in Pune, and there are a number of other laboratories across the country, including the DRDO laboratory at Gwalior, which deal with these kind of things. But there are no countrywide sensors which are looking at chemical contamination. It is too huge to do that. As far as bio is concerned, yes, under the Ministry of Health and for Family Welfare, there are biosurveillance centers which have been set up down to tehsil level. And these biosurveillance centers from across the country are giving a daily morning input to the Ministry of Health. There is a central body which is monitoring all this, and that complete surveillance data is being updated on a regular basis. And any incidence of a disease or an illness in a particular area is getting recorded in the national level, and immediately the local health authorities are getting informed, and they start taking action accordingly. So biosurveillance is happening. Nuclear surveillance is happening. Chemical, unfortunately, is too huge, and there are no such sensors which are deployed all the country. And that is why I mentioned to you about that central control system at municipal levels which need to be installed, where such chemical inputs can also be got in a city or in a metro or in a town, that immediate actions can take place and response measures can be instituted. But we don't have that as yet.
Sir, question from Narendra. Like, as you said, the chemical accident can be prevented as the world learned from the Bhopal tragedy. But then why can't India learn from such tragedy, and where it is lagging? Therefore, it could not prevent the tragedy such as Riya's tragedy.
Yeah. We have learned our lessons. We have learned a lot of lessons from Bhopal. In fact, it was India which actually learned all the lessons, sadly so, because of the casualties which started happening. They are all documented. Those lessons have been learned. The precautionary measures have been made. Regulations have been enacted after that. But our chemical action bill, which is still pending since 2013, has not yet got operationalized. not been approved as yet. In spite of that, there are a whole lot of regulations which have been issued to the industry. But where we are going wrong is the monitoring, the oversight, and the implementation on ground. In India, we have this concept of chalta hai. And that is what is actually causing all these problems in India. We need to get out of that. The same industry which is working in Europe of the same company does not have that problem. Why? Because their ground level monitoring and management is much strict than what we are doing in India. In India, this chalta hai attitude is what is causing casualties for us. And we need to stop that. We have the best practices, we have the regulations, and we have all the means which are required to do that. But whether it is corruption, whether it is negligence, whether it is complacency, whatever you call it, but that is where we are going wrong. And we need to put a stop to that, to put a stop to casualties taking place.
So, question by Rupak Radhakrishnan. I had a question on community transmission, which the MIA has stated today in the news channel. Is this true? Are we as a going towards herd immunity in the country?
The first part, community transmission, yes, it is happening in the country. My firm belief, community transmission is happening in the country. Otherwise, we would not be having so many cases rising up every day. So that is happening. As far as herd immunity is concerned, Indians by nature, or South Asians by nature, because of our diet, because of our lifestyle, and the type of living that we are going through, right, since ages, our immunity levels are much higher than the Western world. It's a fact. Whether with the spices that we eat, whether the type of cooking that we do, most of our food is very highly cooked. And that itself ensures that a lot of such viruses and bacteria get sorted out. So our lifestyle ensures that our immunity levels are high. As far as COVID is concerned, yes, because of community transmission which is taking place, there is a herd immunity which will start getting generated. But it is not something which will happen overnight. It will take months for herd immunity to get developed. And it differs from person to person. Every person's immunity levels are different. Your vulnerability levels are different. It is also depending on the type of exposures that you're getting. Just going out for shopping and coming back after 1 hour does not mean that you're starting to generate, herd immunity. People who are, for example, civic workers, garbage collectors and so on, who are working day and night in such environments where contamination is spreading quite a lot, their chance of getting herd immunity is much higher than people who are in much protected environment. So yes, herd immunity will happen, but it will take time. It will take a lot of time to happen. And contagion is spreading, community spread is happening. Community transmission is taking place in India. So that is my view on that particular issue.
So next question is, what is the specific role of NDMA and SDMAs in dealing with CBRN threats? Also, do you support India should be a member of NSG?
As far as, I'll take the first question of NDMA and SDMAs. Yes, NDMA and SDMAs have been made the agencies responsible for managing CBRN disasters or CBRN incidents in the country. All SDMAs and NDMA itself have got guidelines and SOPs generated. If you just Google on the internet on SOP for CBRN or chemical terrorist incident or CBRN terrorist incident, say for example, district of Akola in Maharashtra, you will find that that district organization has made an SOP on how to deal with CBRN terrorism incident within that district. So paperwork has gone in, but physical on-ground response mechanisms and measures or footprint for that is still lacking. NDMA has got NDRF battalions at the national level to deal with CBRN. I mentioned to you that every battalion, and there are 12 such battalions, every battalion has got one team which is trained for CBRN, equipped for CBRN. But imagine just 12 teams in the whole country. It is just not sufficient. In a simple thing, like for example, if you have an incident taking place in Vadodara or Ankleshwar, and the team is based at Ahmedabad, you can imagine how much time it will take for the team to move from Ahmedabad to Ankleshwar or to Vadodara. We talk of a golden hour in such kind of things, and now people are talking of platinum minutes in a disaster situation, especially in a CBRN disaster situation. So if you're not able to reach and apply your response mechanism in the first 1 hour, you're going to have casualties. And therefore, our response footprint is grossly low, woefully low. And that is why I have been advocating that wherever there is a cluster of industries or risk areas, we need to have on-site response teams generated within the organization there to be able to respond in a timely manner. And that is required. So coming to the second part, the nuclear supplies group question. That is something which India needs to prove to the world, and which we are doing a lot of work in that. We are very close to getting into the NSG to prove to the world that we are a very responsible nuclear weapon state, which we are. But there have been pressures in the club of the nuclear suppliers group, whether they should accept India or not. So we are at a very high level of getting compliance to all that. And I'm hoping that very soon we should be part of the nuclear suppliers group.
Thank you so much, sir. We are done with the questions. Sir, I would like to show my gratitude to you, and often when we talk about topics like nuclear and CBRN and radiations, it is very tough to understand, but you explained it with so much ease, and throughout the webinar,
My pleasure.
Very informative. So thank you so much for your time and knowledge, sir. So we would like to present the certificate to you, and this is a digital.
Thank you so much.
It will be soon the mail to you, sir. I would also like to show my gratitude to Dr. Sumit Kumar Chaudhary, sir, as he is giving us this opportunity that during this time of pandemic also we can just sit back and relax and attend such sessions. And like knowledge has no limit, so we can have all the important issues being discussed also, which is the main motto of our first dialogue forum. I would also like to show my gratitude to our faculties and students of SFSRM and the entire member of the SFSRM RSU family. Also, I would like to announce that all the love you have showed us on platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Now it's time to do the same on Twitter, because recently we joined Twitter. So I would like to request you all to follow us on these platforms so you can keep yourself updated that what we are up to. Last but not the least, participants, we are coming up with another webinar on 26th July 2020. The webinar is on forensic neurocriminology, reasoning and rehabilitation, R&R, by Dr. Emory Bai Clark. He is consultant clinical psychologist, head of psychology for ACNCC London, UK. So please register yourself. You can go on our site, you can go on our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and you can see the link. Please register yourself, and we are looking forward to participation the same way a lot of people participated. We are looking forward to same enthusiasm and participation in 26th July webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and it was a very interesting session with you all, and thank you for all the questions. You can share my email ID with students or faculty whose questions have not yet been answered, and I shall be happy to answer them once I get them in the mail. So thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. Chaudhary and Dr. Shweta, for getting me on board here. Jai Hind.
Sir, thank you so much for being here with us today. We were very fortunate to have frontline leaders against CBRN on our platform today. And it was an amazing session. You touched so many important aspects, like India's vulnerability, the most important. Then you also mentioned how we are, learning the lessons from Bhopal gas tragedy. But still, despite having hundreds of laws, why is it still happening? So sensitivity is very important. Dear friends, whatever sir has tried to underline is the materials are hazardous. Talking is not hazardous. So please talk more on the subject. Sensitize yourself. Sensitize the people around you. And see, this is the level of sensitization in the cities. Think about villages. Think about rural pockets of the country. So we need to talk more about this. We need to make people aware about this. And I'm sure and I'm very grateful to Colonel Dr. Athavale sir that the way he has presented in coming days, I'm sure his dreams of a National Center of Excellence on CBRN would be fulfilled. His dream on the Chemical Action Bill would be fulfilled. And he is taking a lot of strides, lot of efforts. So all those would be realized. Also on behalf of my Honorable Director General of Raksha Shakti University, on behalf of SFSRM family, I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Athavale sir as an adjunct faculty of School of Forensic Science and Risk Management.
Thank you so much.
Sir, your presence and joining us will augment our intellectual capital. And in coming days, I'm sure with your leadership, with your visionary intellectual capital and everything, we'll be able to present perhaps maybe the first postgraduate program in India. And all this is possible, sir. We just need to take some positive steps. And I'm sure the country now needs such kind of awareness, such kind of programs to be presented before them. I also would like to thank all the participants, the foreign participants, the Indian participants, the participants from military organizations, armed forces, our central police organizations. I would like to thank all my team of First Dialogue who are constantly making efforts to present this kind of webinars. Thanks to Dr. Shweta and Sudhanshu Tiwari in particular, who Shweta ma'am, who has interacted and could bring Dr. Athavale on this platform for this wonderful session. All the faculties, thank you so much. Richa, very well handled. And thank you so much, all of you, all the participants. Look forward to see you all on more webinars of SFSRM. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.